Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. We're doing the Erik ten Hag press conference for the Real Sociedad game on the evening, which is interesting. He's just finished the interview there. Beth was there with Ryan from the United Stand. Two fantastic questions from Beth, one to Casemiro and one to Ten Hag about the Dalot question. I love these types of questions, well thought out, well structured, and really asked him about when we're going to get a backup and who's his backup at the moment. So we got a good answer to that, which we'll talk about. But I suppose the first place to start off is with this story that came out a little bit earlier on that Anthony Martial, maybe not a surprise, Jadon Sancho, bit of a surprise, and Anthony, bit of a shame, haven't travelled with Manchester United to Sociedad. Now, I didn't expect that. I think Anthony Martial not travelling is probably quite correct. We need to be a bit careful with Martial. He's only just been back in training. But Jadon Sancho and Anthony not going in a game where we need to win by 2 clear goals, it certainly sets it up to be quite difficult because we know Sociedad have got a few players out injured, but now so have we. Ronaldo, Rashford, the only 2 senior attackers we've got, which means we're going to have to start Garnacho or Elanga. Or a Plestri or a Shoretire or someone like that. So yeah, it weakens our opportunities, doesn't it? And it also makes your mind wander to Villa on Sunday. Is Anthony out of that? So yeah, look, very, very more difficult task, I think. And Ten Hag was asked about how difficult this task is, and I think he gave an answer he has to give. But I also think it may well be a difficult challenge if we don't finish top of the group. Big up, brother. Keep going, says Nihal. Thank you very much. Hope we're all doing very well. Elanga will start, says Paul Irwin. Yeah, I'm not sure everyone will like that. Evening Goldbridge, that's Kev in the chat there. It's pissing it down with Kev here in the Midlands at the moment. I don't know what it's like in Manchester, but I've had pictures from Ryan and Beth, and it's lovely and sunny in Spain. So they're getting all the good gigs. Anyway, let's get into it. So Sancho's ill. Martial is obviously only just recovering. No update on Anthony. Didn't really acknowledge that in the sense that we know it was a knock at the weekend. We don't know anything more. And I think sometimes with what I would say is I don't think Anthony's injury is bad. I think he will be back hopefully for the Villa game. Certainly before the World Cup break and certainly for the World Cup. But one thing that does worry me a little bit about Ten Hag is you don't get always good detail on when a player's, how severe an injury is. I think at times in the Ten Hag era, we've maybe thought that Martial might be back sooner than he was. The Wan-Bissaka injury, the Donny injury, we never really got any updates on how long they were going to be. So I'm a little bit concerned about Anthony as to, hopefully it won't be too long. But we've got no Anthony, no Sancho, and no Martial for this huge game against Sociedad tomorrow night. I'm also going to talk to you a bit about Bellingham in a minute and Man United's transfer budget because that's been mentioned by the Mirror, who seem to have good connections around Manchester United. But that's the injury news. Lindelof has travelled. It's chucking it down in Manchester as well. Come, Mr. Bond, says the Shogun. Doesn't that guarantee that Rashford and Ronaldo will start? 100%, Ethan. Yeah, 100%. But Lindelof is back. He's travelled. But obviously, it's attackers we're short of. Ten Hag was asked a question about how... Actually, should we just do Beth's questions first? Because they were so good. Bruno on the wing, same midfield versus Villa, says Robert McCormack. We could do that. I think Bruno whips a good cross in as well, so we could do that. We'll have to see. Let's just do Beth's questions because they were very good in the press conference. I really liked them. And the first questions he asked, we were discussing this afternoon actually about if you get a question, what to ask. And the question was basically constructed by this. Chelsea, Liverpool, etc. Big rivals of ours for the top 4 this year. Probably going to strengthen in January. Dalot has played lots of games and he's going to play a lot more games. How long can he continue playing these games and keeping that performance level up? And is it important, therefore, to be bringing a backup in January? So Ten Hag answered that question by basically saying, look, it's not about just keeping those levels up. It's about continually progressing, which I think he will. And I think he will get better and his development will get better. But also we need to be careful because there's lots of games and there's lots of competitions. Effectively, he basically said that Malacia and Lindelof are the backup right backs. He also said that Aaron Wan-Bissaka is back, but he also said that we know he knows he needs real backups and real competition for places, and it's clear it's it's a very important situation. I think it's very obvious that Erik ten Hag wants a right back. He wanted a right back in the summer. This is why we wanted to put this question to him, and the answer that he gave really exposes that he wants a right back. The fact that Malacia and Lindelof are the backup right backs at the moment just shows you. And yes, we've got Brandon Williams, and yes, we've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but he wants a right back. He wanted a right back in the summer. We didn't get rid of Wan-Bissaka. He wants a right back in January. I feel that the right back position is fragile. Dalot has been not only unbelievably performing, but the relentless nature of his stamina to keep performing is fantastic as well. He's playing 3 games a week, and I don't know whether anyone else has figured it out yet, but he's been playing 3 games a week for 3 months. He's going to the World Cup, and then he's going to come back and be asked to play 3 games a week for about 6 months. He'll break down at some point. We've got to have a rotational there. And the problem is, Lindelof may well be able to play at right back. Malacia may well be able to play at right back, but Malacia is left-footed. Lindelof is a centre-back, and Wan-Bissaka is not the right profile of right back. So, look, it might be a bit obvious, but sometimes you've got to chuck those questions to the manager, and that's why we did it, and that's why Beth asked it. And I think it exposes what we know. We need a right back for 2 reasons. 1, Dalot can't play that much football, and 2, there is really not a viable option. Wan-Bissaka is the most obvious one, but unless you've banged your head and you don't remember what Wan-Bissaka's like as a right back, he's not an inverted attacking right back with loads and loads of stamina to get back and forth. He's a defensive right back in a team that, he's not good going forward. So he's not really an alternative, and we do need one. The second question we asked Beth asked to Casemiro, and I liked this question. 2 great questions from Beth. Best of the whole presser, in my opinion, says Daniel Kirk. She asked Casemiro on his opinion on the style of what's the difference between the Premier League and La Liga, and on the style and the speed of it. And although I didn't catch the complete translation, because Casemiro spoke in I think he spoke in Spanish, he said really open. Some of Casemiro's answers were really, really good. He said, look, they are 2 entirely different competitions. In Spain, I think he even referenced tiki-taka. He said in Spain, there's a lot of tiki-taka passing style of football, and he referenced the speed and physicality of the Premier League. So that's very interesting when you get... I think some people play it safe. Eriksen a couple of weeks ago, when he was asked about pressure and difference, and he just wouldn't acknowledge it. Casemiro basically did acknowledge the fact that it's night and day between La Liga and the Premier League in relation to the challenges and the intensity and the style of football, which feeds into another thing he said about Real Sociedad and how, well, look, they're not going to sit back and defend because most teams in Spain want to play proactive passing football. So I thought that was good as well. And it's interesting because I think we all like Casemiro, but... I agree with Ten Hag that with Casemiro, he is getting better by the game. But the style of football is really different. And yes, he's a multi-Champions League winner. Yes, he's one of the best CDMs in the world. But when you hear him say, look, they're completely different competitions, La Liga and the Premier League, you can sort of understand why there is still going to be an adjustment period. And I think if you threw Verratti into the Premier League, or Barella into the Premier League, or even Jude Bellingham into the Premier League, he's never played in the Premier League, just because he's got a British passport, then you would expect a little bit of adjustment. I know it's random, but did we ever find out if De Jong ever took a pay cut, says Joe Alexander? I don't know. I don't think he did. I don't think he did. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think he did. Anyway, let's go back to the questions. They were very good from Beth. Ten Hag was asked about topping the group. How important is it? He said it's important, but we know what we've got to do. We've got to score 2 goals. However, I think he's sort of playing both hands here. If we don't finish top of the group, if you want to win the tournament, you've got to win. You've got to beat all the teams. But there was another question he was asked, and I just want to find it here. He was asked about... what was he... Okay, yeah. He was asked about this. So... Obviously, the quality of the Europa League is about to go up. The journalist said, look, Ajax, Barcelona, there's many other teams dropping down from the Champions League. 2 more games for you against one of those could be fatal to your hopes of winning the Europa League. And I think the way this question was being put was basically, not only is it 2 more games you want to avoid, but that those 2 more games could be against a team that could knock you out. And I think it's right. We're not just trying to avoid 2 extra games, which we do want to avoid, but also you're adding two. I mean, basically, do you want to buy? And Ten Hag replied and said, look, yes, it would be more difficult if we had to play those games, but we like those sort of challenges, and you have to beat them all anyway. I disagree with that. I think it's the right answer from the manager of Manchester United. But if I'm the manager and you're telling me to win the tournament, I've got to play Barcelona twice, Ajax twice, Arsenal twice, and a couple of other teams twice to win it, or you don't have to play the Barcelona game because you're through. You've got a better. It's not the same, basically. Those two extra games against the decent competition makes it harder because it's a longer tournament for you. It's more chance of going out. It's more fatigue, and it elongates your season and gives you more challenges. So look, Ten Hag answers the question because I think he knows that we might be in a situation tomorrow night after the game where we haven't finished top and we just go, at the end of the day, we just got to get on with it. It's perfect answer from Ten Hag. But deep down, he knows like we do. We want to avoid those two games in February because it will make our job easier without those two games. It's clear. Huh? Anyway, what else was he asked? He was asked whether he expects Real Sociedad. This is Ten Hag. He was asked whether he expected Sociedad to play defensive tomorrow. Obviously, they know that if they don't lose by 2 goals, they'll top the group. And I've got to say, I think that Sociedad are favourites to top the group now. I think they were anyway, but I think they are firm favourites now. With no Anthony, no Sancho, no Martial, we are limited up front, and I don't think Sociedad are a bad defensive side. So it's going to be very hard for us tomorrow. But he said, look, their coach likes to play proactively. This is what Ten Hag said about the Sociedad coach. I like that. He likes to play football. And I think they'll stick to that proactive style of play. But we know what we know what we need to do anyway. If they play defensive, we know what we need to do. And that was something that Casemiro echoed as well. That was mentioned 3 or 4 times in the interview. We know what we need to do. And the most thought, and it was also asked about the team. Casemiro was asked about the team and the team's improved since he's come into it. And Casemiro said, look, the most important thing is we are growing as a team and we're becoming a very solid team by every game. Casemiro spoke about Sociedad and said Sociedad never play to defend. And obviously, Casemiro's played in La Liga. How many years has Casemiro played in La Liga? It must be 7, 8, I don't know, many years. So yeah, he's made it many years. And he said, look, Sociedad never play to defend. They go out to play football. Practically every team in Spain goes out to play football. So hopefully that bodes well. I think that there is maybe this perception that because Sociedad know if they don't lose by 2 goals, they go through, they might sit back and defend. But, I don't think that will be the case. I loved Eric's answer on De Gea, my keeper, my manager, clear, says Daniel Kirk. We'll come to that in a minute. We've spoken about the Delot thing. We've spoken about the style of Premier League. Casemiro was asked about Paul Pogba in the World Cup, and does that play on the mind, knowing that you're so close to the start of the World Cup and any injury now would put you out of the World Cup? And he was adamant that that's not the case. He said, look, you can't think about the World Cup. I know it's close, but you can't think about the World Cup because tomorrow is too important a game. And if you think like that, you will get injured. So no, we can't be thinking about the World Cup. I've got a massive game tomorrow and it's not who I am. And I think when you start thinking about things like that, that's when you do get injured. So you know what, though? Brilliant answer from Casemiro. Exactly the sort of answer you would want. But actually, let's have a little think here. It must be very difficult for footballers who... The World Cup is a huge tournament. 4 years. 4 years is it's a very long time in football if you miss it. Whether your country qualifies or not. If I play in the World Cup in 2018 and my country doesn't qualify in 2022, it's 8 years until I'll play in the next one. This is why the World Cup is a big thing to players. It might not be a big thing to you, it is to a lot of fans, but to players, you could play in your first World Cup at 20. If you miss the next one through injury or whatever, you won't play in your next World Cup till you're 28. They don't come around very often. And, I think it is a good question because there's a lot of players who... They're so close to that World Cup and they're being asked to play massive games before it. And you're in that avenue now where if you do your hamstring or you do twist your ankle, you ain't back for the World Cup. So any little injury now, and there will be some players over this weekend and over the next 2 weeks, not necessarily United players, hopefully, touch wood, but there will be some players over the next couple of weeks in the Premier League and across Europe who pick up an injury that's going to put them out of the World Cup. For me, that's another big reason why this Winter World Cup is completely stupid. At least if you have a Summer World Cup and it's going to start on June the 10th, if you pick up an injury, you have 2 or 3 weeks normally before the tournament starts. And also at the end of the season, you know, you pretty much know, unless you're a select few clubs, that you're not trying to win a trophy or a league title or relegation. So, yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. He asked about that. World Cup, he was asked about that. Ten Hag was asked about Ronaldo and how he's feeling at the moment, and he basically answered it in the way I think he thought many people would have expected him. He said you'd need to ask Ronaldo about his feelings, but obviously he's got his opportunity at the moment and things are going well. Ten Hag was asked about Casemiro specifically, and he said, look, I said it before, he's the cement between the stones. In and out of possession, he is the cement in between the stones. He binds everything together in and out of possession, and then went on to tell us the story of signing him. And he said, "Look, I spoke to him before we bought him, and he told me he needed a new challenge. Madrid, he'd won everything. They didn't want him to go at Madrid. They wanted to keep him." But he wanted a new league, and he wanted to go and prove himself again, and that really impressed me. This is the words of Ten Hag. So, look, I don't know whether Madrid would deny that or not, but Ten Hag's just said it publicly. He doesn't come across as the sort of manager that hypes or lies, you know. So, yeah, I mean, look, Casemiro, he's only 30, and he referenced that himself in the interview. And the fact that he wants to come and prove himself in a league that's completely different to La Liga and a new challenge because he's won it all at Madrid could be to our benefit. And the reason they posed that question to Ten Hag, by the way, is that because we bought a lot of players who've been successful elsewhere who then ultimately end up not being successful at United. So that's how Ten Hag phrased his answer, that, look, this is a player that wanted to come here for a new challenge to prove himself. That was what impressed him the most. Joshua Bowwater has done a super chat. He says, with the players we have available, I'd play a midfield of Casemiro, Eriksen and Donny with Bruno off the right, says Joshua. I think he'll play Fred. Vandy Candy says Casemiro was tired of winning the Champions League. Also, he was asked about David De Gea. What's his thoughts on David De Gea? And he said, look, clean sheet is always the focus. It's important, but it's also important in the modern game to be able to do things with your feet. Maybe in the past there was, and I think this is the biggest point, maybe in the past there was a different style, but for me, he's capable of playing with his feet. He does it really well, and he's good at doing it. And obviously we want him to keep progressing, doing that as well. And I think the most important thing there is that and I know Ten Hag's spoken about De Gea before, but that was quite interesting when he said, maybe in the past there was a different style, because I've spoken about this. We've spoken about this. I'm going to do a members video this week on De Gea, and I've got to get the Casemiro one up as well. So you're going to get a couple. If you're a member, join the members club. You're going to get 2 exclusive videos this week. But David De Gea is very different this season to last season and the season before it. And David De Gea over the last 3 years under Solskjaer was very different to what he was like under Mourinho. Under Mourinho, he did come out of his box more and he did pass more. Under Solskjaer, he didn't come out of his box much and he didn't pass. Under Ten Hag, more than both those managers, he's coming out of his box more and he's passing out from the back better. And I said this would happen in the summer because Ten Hag will ask him to do it. And whether he can do it well or not will be down to De Gea. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, if you can be asked to go and watch some of our football last year, ball goes to keeper, centre-backs and full-backs turn their back and run away. What is keeper supposed to do? Keeper can't pass out from the back when defenders are turning their back and running away because it's counter-attack football. So, of course, that's what Ten Hag is talking about. Different style of play to the way I play. And David De Gea is not Ederson. I don't think you could knock the ball to David De Gea and he'll control it, first touch, do a little flick. But he is a player that if he gets a good ball, he can look up, take a touch and pass it out. And it's working well at the moment. Nihal says, can we have a brief highlight on the injuries from Ten Hag? So Martial's not going because he's on the road to recovery. He is training now, but he's not quite ready. Jadon Sancho is ill and hasn't travelled, and Anthony hasn't travelled with the knock he had last weekend. We don't know the extent of the knock. We don't know how long Anthony's out for. Hopefully he'll be back soon. But Victor Lindelof has recovered from illness and is back. I would hazard a guess that these illnesses that are going round, and there's a lot of these illnesses going round at the moment, are potentially COVID, because there's a lot of COVID in the UK at the moment. I think I had it 2 weeks ago, and I felt quite rough. I didn't test, so I don't know, but I think I've had it, and we don't have to test now. And I know a lot of people have had COVID, and you see a lot of it being reported. So there may well, and I don't think players have to test anymore. Don't remember at every game, every week, we used to get the tests from the Premier League and the results. So there's a lot of cold and COVID going around the UK at the moment. So I heard somebody say today that there's a lot of players, a lot of United players getting ill. I think Rashford was ill, wasn't he, a couple of weeks ago? Lindelof's been ill, Sancho's ill. So it could be that, something's going round the squad at the moment, whether it's COVID, a cold, or the flu, or whatever. Somebody said Sancho's always ill. I don't know whether that's the case. I don't really focus on that enough. And there was another question. Casemiro was asked about Ten Hag. I liked this as well. Ten Hag said, he basically said, look, the thing that stood out for me and surprised me was that his obsession for winning. He's obsessed with the teaching and the perfection, and that's unique. And I've seen it in very few managers. So that relationship between Casemiro and Ten Hag is growing. Casemiro is one of the best CDMs in the world. Ten Hag is the new Manchester United manager. And it may have been a little bit of an uncertain start. I certainly don't think Casemiro was the signing that Ten Hag wanted. Let's be honest, it was Frenkie de Jong. But I think that relationship is blossoming by the game. And like Ten Hag said about Casemiro, that he's getting better and better by the game. I think that Ten Hag and Casemiro's relationship is growing and growing into something very, very special, because Ten Hag speaks so glowingly about him and Casemiro speaks so glowingly about him. And I think that's goats appreciating goats, isn't it, really? Because you've got one of the best CDMs in the world being bigged up and praised by our manager, and then you've got him praising Ten Hag. And I tell you what, when Casemiro is praising Ten Hag in that way, Ten Hag's the real deal. Well, we knew this anyway. Well, let's not be arrogant. I think this is why we wanted him to be our manager. We suspected that Ten Hag was the real deal, and I think he is. He's proving that at the moment. It's a long, long journey, though. A very, very long journey. And both Casemiro and Ten Hag, again, in this interview, did say how the journey is ongoing. And it's going to be interesting. Jeff Evans says that's a big compliment for Ten Hag based upon who Casemiro has had as coaches in the past. Exactly. But yeah, just a reminder, Beth was in the interview. She's over in Spain with Ryan off the United Stand. Very, very good question about Dalot and how long he can keep playing all these games, and are we going to be getting a backup in January? Ten Hag acknowledged that you've got to have good backup and good competition. And it's clear that other clubs are going to look for that as well. But he said, look, Dalot is playing a lot of football. And I need him to keep progressing and developing. But we do need to have cover there. And he said at the moment, Malacia and Lindelof are the cover. And now we've got Wan-Bissaka back. So, yeah. And also, Casemiro was the other question we asked him, was what's the difference between the Premier League and La Liga? And it was a really good answer. He said it's completely different competitions. In Spain, it's very tiki-taka passing, and in the Premier League, it's very fast and intense. Very, very different. Who's your favourite striker for us to get in the summer, says Yash? I don't know, I don't know who we might go for in the summer. I think it's going to be very interesting. But interestingly, I don't know whether you saw in the Mirror, I think it was Disco Mirror, the journalist, and the Mirror seemed to have some connection with Man United since Ten Hag's come in. They basically come out with two quite positive stories this evening. One of them that Jude Bellingham is the priority for Murta and Ten Hag next summer. And then the second was that funds will be there for Ten Hag to challenge for the biggest trophies. So look, I mean, that's quite a positive story, isn't it? That is quite a positive story. Ten Hag didn't say anything about Donny van der Beek, Shane. I'm not so sure that Donny van der Beek is a relevant question at the moment. He's back training. He's got to get himself in the team. But look, I've got to be honest. I think both those stories in the Mirror are quite positive. And if they're true, happy days. I don't think they are true. I think Murta and Ten Hag's priority being Jude Bellingham next summer doesn't seem right to me. Jude Bellingham's going to cost £100 million minimum, and I don't see United doing that deal. I don't know that it would be right to do that. I mean, I am a massive fan of Jude Bellingham, and I think if you can get him and he wants to come, you've got to go and do it. And I would say that. But realistically, do we need Jude Bellingham for 100 million, or do we need a right back, a striker, a centre back, and a midfielder? And when you start spending £100 million on one player every summer, it slows down the rebuild of the squad. Because if we buy Jude Bellingham in the summer, we're going to do very well to get a striker as well. We won't get a right back. We won't get a centre back, and we'll be stuck with what we've got. Their hyping is up to forget the winter window, says Mario Franco, and I think you probably nailed where I was going there. I don't believe we'll get Jude Bellingham, by the way. I don't. We're no good when we have to compete with somebody, and God, you are going to compete with Jude Bellingham. I don't think there is going to be a bigger player available in the summer than Jude Bellingham. I think he's going to be the Erling Haaland of the summer. And therefore, you're going to have to put Man City, Real Madrid, PSG, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Chelsea, maybe Barcelona. Most of those clubs are going to be in for him because he's a game changer. He is a unique talent, and he's going to massively improve your team, and he's 100% worth 100 million. Where do Man United figure in that game? Even if we had the money, even if he was interested, how do you win that battle? How do you win against those teams? So I have to say, as much as it would be easy to say, oh, have you read this about Ten Hag and Murta and their number one priority is Bellingham? It doesn't make any sense to me, because the number one priority is actually a new striker, a new right back, a new centre back, in my opinion. And yeah, we do need a midfielder. But if you spend £100 million chasing Bellingham, and let's be honest, the more competition for the more competition for Bellingham, the higher the price goes. And I don't think he chooses anyway. So, yeah, it feels to me like it's a story to push you past the winter window and think you're going to do that in the summer. And we've all been down that road with the Glazers before. Oh, don't look at this window. Look at the one in the summer. Oh, we tried and we didn't get him. As for the funds being available in the summer, I've got to say, I don't agree with that. I don't think we've got funds in the summer at all. That's not what Richard Arnold said in the summer, and where's all this money coming from to do what we did last summer again? So, yeah, I think it's a nice positive story from an outlet that's been pretty good around Manchester United recently, but I don't think Ten Hag's going to be given the funds to compete for the big trophies, because it's all relative, isn't it? The Glazers might think £100 million a summer is good enough to fight for big trophies. You're wrong. So to fight for big trophies, you're going to have to spend £200 million every summer and probably another 50 every January. So £250 million a year for the next 3 years is what United need, because I think we need 750 million quid on that team. I think from the start we needed £1 billion and we spent 200 already. So yeah, people can laugh about that, but I don't agree with the $1 billion we've spent in the last 10 years. I think we've wasted it. I think that team still needs 6-7 top quality players over the next 2 years. Definitely another centre back, definitely a right back. We do need another goalkeeper, whether it's to replace De Gea or understudy De Gea. We definitely need another midfielder or two. There needs to be an understudy to Casemiro. There probably needs to be another midfielder if Donny leaves. We need probably maybe another number 10 at some point. We do need another striker or two. So, yeah, we need quite a few players, and they're going to cost money. And look, I'm all for it if we're going to buy Bellingham and we're going to keep giving Ten Hag £250 million a summer. But I think that's just deflection talk to move us away from thinking we're going to do anything in the transfer window in January. Chris says Bellingham's going to Liverpool, mark my words. Liverpool fans are very confident about getting Bellingham, but can I just say this? Are you confident that you're getting top four? Because if you don't get top four, why would he go to a Europa League club? And I would say the same about us. Why would you go to a Europa League club? I'd say Real Madrid are the favourites to get Bellingham, if I'm honest, if you're interested in that. Luke82 says, good evening, Mark, Mods and chat. I've got COVID again. Rest up, mate. That's the most important thing. Get well soon. Yash says, Fred will do a pirouette as a tribute to Anthony. And, yeah, well, look, bringing it back to the start, really interested to see. Well, I'm very excited about tomorrow's game. Remember, this time tomorrow will be, 5:45, 6:30. We'll be well into the second half. 5:45 kickoff tomorrow, of course. Well into the second half. And it's going to be such a difficult game. I think we're fortunate that Sociedad have got a few injuries. We know we've got a few injuries now. But, yeah, no Anthony, no Sancho, no Martial. And, yeah, I do worry about Anthony a little bit and the knock. Because Anthony had quite a significant injury. Let me just have a quick look. Anthony had quite a significant injury at the end of last season. And I think it was ankle. I'll just double check for you now. I mean, look, it's probably just a knock and it's probably fine. But if I told you that Anthony missed 3 days with a knock in October 2 years ago. He had a muscular problem in the November that kept him out for 2 weeks. He had another knock in March that kept him out for 15 days in 2021. And then he had an ankle injury in March of this year that kept him out until July, 114 days. So, yeah, I mean, God, no, we're not saying Anthony's injury prone in any way, but what I am saying is he has come back from quite a significant ankle injury, and yeah, we might too much spinning, says Retro. Yeah, I wonder if all those spinnings weakened his ankle. But no, on a serious note, I do think he'll be okay. I do think he'll be back very soon. I certainly think he'll be back playing for the World Cup and playing for us before the World Cup. But I do worry a little bit because I think Ten Hag is very clever about his injuries in that he doesn't really disclose anything. And sometimes you think a player's going to be back soon and they're not back for a long time at all. Have you heard anything about Choupo-Moting? No, I haven't, Soom. Done quite good at Bayern, but I'm not sure he's the sort of player. I agree with what Robert McCormack said. To be honest with you, tomorrow, I would rather put Bruno on the right-hand side than Alanga. Yeah, I'd rather put Bruno on the right-hand side for that natural right-footed cross. And also, Bruno doesn't play particularly well behind Ronaldo, does he? So I would be thinking Bruno to the right, Eriksen to the 10, Fred where Eriksen plays, Casemiro. And then you've always got the option of Donny. That's what I would do. I don't think he will. I think we will see Alanga off the right. We'll see Bruno, Eriksen and Casemiro because that's his best midfield. But also, let's not forget, Bruno can't play against Villa either. So sticking him out on the right-hand side helps us against Sociedad, but also prepares us for Villa by playing Fred, Eriksen and Casemiro. So that's what I would do. I think that's the way to go. Would you put Garnacho out, considering how well he's done, says Imperial X? I think tomorrow night, the reason I would play Bruno is because we've had a lot of success from crosses in our last couple of games. And I think if we're going to score against Sociedad, we're going to have to put some good crosses into the box. I mean, Rashford's been very good with his head in the last couple of games. We know Ronaldo is very good in the air. So, yeah, I would do that. Would you start Donny and Bruno on the right, says Mick Elrich? I wouldn't start Donny. I'd actually start Fred and Casemiro and try that with Eriksen as the 10. Because then you've got Donny who can come on. That's what I would do. Because remember, if this game's 0-0 with half an hour to go, you probably bring Donny on to try something different, and that could be his big chance. So yeah, I would start Donny on the bench and see how it goes. Just Keevan said he would play Donny. Interesting. If only we had Gakpo instead of Alanga, says Savage. I'm all right, Danielle. Hope you are as well. Sleepy Bridge says, I am really tired. I'm really tired. I was in London yesterday and I've been running around a lot today. I was meant to be doing a 2 o'clock show and then I couldn't do it. So, yeah, I'm a bit tired today. Lots of things going on. What do you think about the Real Arena? Isn't it a comfortable place to play in, Mark? Says MUFC. And would rather play Delo on the right and Aaron Wan-Bissaka as right back if he's ready, says Yusuf. I don't think Wan-Bissaka's travelled, has he? If anyone in the chat can answer that, I don't know whether he's travelled or not. You have to let me know about that one. In fact, I'll be able to let you know. 1 minute. I'm still here. I've got a super chat coming in as well. Get your questions in. You're all very welcome, of course. I'm back now. So, our super chat says, with Anthony out, could Eric Ten Hag give Sancho a chance on the right? Stephen, where have you been? Get out, Stephen. If you're not gonna be here from the start, get out. What's the point? No, Stephen, seriously, Sancho's not there. He's not travelled. Apparently, Wan-Bissaka did travel, but he's not travelled as Sancho. So no Sancho and no Sancho, sorry, and no Anthony and no Martial. So no, you can't start Sancho tomorrow. He's ill. Jadon Sancho is ill. He can't go when you're ill. You can't go. So yeah, there we go. I love your content, Mark. Thank you very much, Ramiro. I'll tell you what, I've got some really exciting stuff coming up for you in the next couple of weeks on the United Stand. I almost want to give you a little bit of a hint, but I'm not going to. But it's really, really exciting. I can't wait. It's so exciting. So exciting. I can't wait. What's going on here then? Would you play Sancho at Cam versus Villa? No. Van Helsing says, who hasn't travelled? Sancho, Martial and Anthony. When do you see Zidane Iqbal getting some game time now that Europa League group stage is going to end? I don't know. Stephen's just woken up from his coma. Give us a teaser, Mark, says just Kevin. The teaser is, the clue is in the screen. There you go. You'll never get it. Mark, a watch-along of Juventus and PSG would have been nice. I'm not doing a watch-along tonight, Chance. I've had enough of the Champions League. I've had enough of it. I tell you what, I will give a shout-out for. I've always said I'd love to do an open and honest interview, and I haven't done one for ages. I did the Ben Foster podcast on Monday. It's out tomorrow, the Foscast. I was asked some really good questions, and I was honest, which I always will be. Glazer's out, says Steve Gallagher. Yeah, some people are worried about this Glazer out movement. Do you think we should be worried about the Glazer out movement? I know many people who are very, 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 very passionate about the Glazer out movement. I think everybody is, but there seems to be people who are like, "Where's the Glazer out movement? Where's the Glazer out movement?" Well, my answer to that would be, it's where it's always been. I think Manchester United fans have always been Glazer out, but you can't get them out if you haven't got a buyer. You can't get them out if they're not going to sell. And unfortunately, the Glazer out movement will always be big when the team is performing badly or we're not doing well in the transfer window. If United buy players and then they start winning games, it's a human psyche thing that it's harder to get angry when things are going well. And the Glazers know this. So the Glazer out movement hasn't gone anywhere. The protests are still happening, but they have more noise when things are going bad because that's just the way it works. But the Glazer out movement hasn't stopped. I do still think they're going to sell, but I always said I don't know when. We put in crosses after cutting in, which are easier to defend rather than from wide areas. Why do you think that's happening? Says Shantani. Well, we have started putting in crosses in more naturally, actually, haven't we? If you look at Luke Shaw, he's not cutting in. He's provided 2 assists in the last week. Ericsson wasn't cutting in. It was a natural cross from the right to Rashford. Bruno wasn't cutting in. It was a natural cross into Ronaldo, who header was saved but followed it in. Jetro says, how do we get a Malacia to Delo's Shaw when Delo and Malacia are both fairly young, says Jetro. You just get one, don't you? Just get one. Oh my God. Thomas says, do you think Ollie wasn't given a fair chance? I think he was given too much of a chance, to be honest. Yeah. Look, Solskjaer is a legend as a player, and I'll never forget that. But as a manager, I'm trying my best to forget about it. I put my hand up. I was there at Old Trafford singing "Ollie's at the wheel," give him the job. But it was a mistake. We were wrong. It was a mistake. In a perfect world, if United wants a box-to-box CM, who'd you get, Mark? Valverde or De Jong? Says Anshul. I don't think we'll end up getting either of them, mate. And I personally think that United need to start scouting better. And I think that's what Ten Hag will do. I think we need to stop looking at the Bellinghams and the De Jongs and the Barellas and people like that who are going to cost you £100 million and look at their Wikipedia page and go, where did they come from? Where did they come from? Where did they go? Where did you come from? But that's what you need to do. Because Bellingham came from Birmingham. Barella came from, was it Brescia, I think? Or maybe it was Cagliari? Or yeah, I think it was one of those two. And it was the other player I mentioned. De Jong came from Ajax. They all come from somewhere before they become £100 million players. And we need to start finding the next Bellingham, the next De Jong, because they will be. There will be. There's so much talent out there in all the youth setups of all the clubs in the world. There are some amazing players coming through, and that's what we need to start doing. We need to start finding these players a step before we do. Because we end up spending £74 million on Jadon Sancho and giving him 300 grand a week. And it has to go right, because if it doesn't go right, it's a very expensive mistake. We spend £80 million on Harry Maguire and give him 200 grand a week, and it has to be perfect, because if it doesn't, it's a huge mistake. We spend £89 million bringing Paul Pogba back, and it has to be right, because if it doesn't, it's a huge mistake. We need to remove that step. I'm amazed it's taken us this long to do it, but we've got to stop doing it. Of course, we haven't stopped doing it because we've just spent £85 million on Anthony. And it has to be right. It has to work. That's the problem. When you spend big money on a player, there's no room for error. They've got to be amazing. Otherwise, you've made a mistake. And we need to recruit better. And I think we need to recruit better by scouting better and bringing in players that are... Because what have we got? What have we got? What have we got? I'll tell you what we've got. We've got a manager that coaches. So we're actually set up. I think with Solskjaer, you've got to deliver him the finished article because he can't coach. With Mourinho, you've got to deliver him the finished article because he doesn't want to coach. With Ten Hag, Klopp, Pep, they'll happily take a player that's on the road to being great and finish them off. They'll get the polish out and shine it. So we've got the manager to develop. Look what's happened with De Gea. Look what's happened with Delo. Look what's happened with Rashford in a short period of time. Give Ten Hag these development players and watch what happens. I think that's the way to go for Manchester United. David says £100 million on Grealish is worse than £80 million on Maguire. I like Jack Grealish, not a £100 million player, and I don't think he's a Man City player. I think Grealish would have suited Man United better, but that's in the past. We were looking at him as well. I hope we develop a player like Zidane, Savage, Garnacho, or someone else from the academy. That's another way, Imperial Alex. I think you've got to look at the academy as well. I'm very hopeful. I mean, look, Garner's gone, so I can't say Garner, but I'm very hopeful out of Mejbri, Laird, Ahmad, Garnacho, Alanga, Iqbal, Savage, McNeil, Gore, Mainu. I'm very hopeful about, and there's many others, but I'm very hopeful. I'm just throwing names out there, but I'm very hopeful out of all those players that we might get 2 or 3 that end up being first teamers. Now, they might not be Ryan Giggs or David Beckham, but they might well be a Wes Brown or a John O'Shea. I think we've got the coach who can deliver that because he knows how to coach. So, yeah, you've got to do that. I don't think our youth setup has done that well. I don't. I mean, what have we got to show for our youth over the last 6 years? Marcus Rashford, Scott McTominay. Rashford, McTominay. You'd want more. We've invested a lot in that. I'm not having a pop at McTominay and Rashford, by the way. I'm just saying that we've invested a lot of money in our youth. And we've got a great record with our youth. We've just come back over the weekends where we're the only club by a long way that's had a youth player on their matchday squad for 85 years. No one's anywhere near that. And we will always do it. Because imagine if we had a game at the weekend and Ten Hag didn't put a youth player on there. We will always do it. Therefore, we're always going to be a club that's connected with youth football. And obviously Busby Babes, class of 92. So we've got to start developing more youth players. Many Man United youth players go and have good careers elsewhere, but we need more than McTominay and Rashford in 6 years. You've got to start bringing them through more consistently. And people will say Mason Greenwood, but look, you can't do anything about that. But we do need more. This is United. They always want a big signing. The club has lost the identity of creating superstars, says Alan Kenny. And I think United doesn't have any good scouting in Brazil. We have to get the next Neymars and Vinicius, says Angel. I think we need. I don't think it's just. I don't think it's just. Brazil. I think it's more than that. I think it's France, Italy, everywhere. I don't think we have bought cheap for a long, long time. And I think that we can certainly do better than that. And I think we have to, because we've got a manager that's more than capable for the first time ever in developing. DJ says tomorrow we should start Rashford on the left, Bruno on the right, and Donny as a 10 and Ronaldo as a 9, says DJ. Interesting. We've wasted our youth talent by having poor coaching when they reach the first team squad. I think that's a fair point. Fred Army as well. Thanks for being a member, pal. Portugal and Brazil has got so many young players, says Tile. There's a lot of rumours about United trying to do things in Brazil, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. I don't want to mention him, but Mason was our best youth product, even over Rashford. What did I call him? Generational talent. I mean, on a football pitch, yeah, he was a very good player with a lot of potential, but it is what it is. There's no point lamenting about it. What will be, will be. Malacia was a smart buy, says Bruce. Yeah, Malacia was a smart buy, and I think that's the sort of sign, Bruce, correct. £12 million, could be a £50 million player in 2 or 3 years' time. I think Malacia is the right sort of player. Would you like Dubai to be owners of our club, says Life Peace? I'd like new owners. We can't sign Brazilians because people complain when they express themselves, says Just Kevin. I don't think the fans do. Kelly says, can't wait for Valverde to join us when he's 30. Yeah. That's the point, isn't it? If you think about Ronaldo coming back, Casemiro, Varane, they're not coming to Man United in their prime. They're coming to Man United when they want a new challenge, or they're coming towards the end of their career. And that's what we need to change. You need to get the next Casemiro, the next Varane. You need to get them at 21 and keep them at the club till they're 28. That's what we need to do. We need to stop spending massive money on players that are, either 22 or 29, and start bringing them in a little bit earlier than that for cheaper and developing them ourselves. Because Real Madrid didn't buy Casemiro as a world-class CDM. They bought him with the potential and gave him the platform to develop and become. Same with Varane. You can criticise Madrid as much as you want, but Tchouaméni, all right, he's got the potential to be world-class, but he's still got to go to Madrid and develop. Same with Camavinga. People say, oh, Real Madrid this, Real Madrid that, but they'll buy a younger player and they'll allow them to develop at Real Madrid and become. And that's what we need to do. Because we're fixated with these expensive signings that really we've got to start developing ourselves. We shouldn't buy Bellingham for 100 million. We will go. He is not physically ready for the Premier League. We should buy more 21 to 24-year-olds, says Sarbish. And we've had a member 6 months who's Alex, who said, Mark, do you think the Glazers would rather spend 140 million on someone like Bellingham or 140 million on 5 or 6 players? I think that's a great question, Alex. What would you rather do? I would rather spend 140 million on maybe not 5 or 6 players, but if I had a choice between you can have Jude Bellingham for 140 million or you can spend that 140 million on 3 or 4 players, I'd spend it on 3 or 4 players. Because for 140 million, I could get a decent fullback to challenge Delo, and I'm not talking about Dumfries for 40. I'm talking about 20, a bit like a Malacia. I could get a decent centre back for maybe 40 million, who's closer to what Varane and Martinez is, so that's 60 million. and I still got £80 million to go and get myself another, a decent striker and another developmental midfielder as well. So yeah, if you're in for the long game, stop buying £100 million players. If it's going to take us 3 years to get back, and we really are rebuilding the club, stop buying £100 million players. In my opinion. But I don't believe that sort of money will be put up anyway. Leonardo has been a member for 4 months. Thank you very much. Bella Kotchup would be perfect. Yeah, Bella Kotchup you'd pick up for a reasonable price. I do like the look of that Bella Kotchup. I do. I really do. Obviously, Timber's there. I mean, to be honest with you, Timber or Bella Kotchup. I mean, Bella Kotchup is a tall centre back, isn't he? He'll go to Liverpool. I'll be stunned if Liverpool don't go for Bella Kotchup or Bayern Munich. We should get Marcus Leonard. He's absolutely phenomenal. Trust me, United should not miss out on him. He's a pure world-class talent, says Kelly James. Hi, Mark. What do you think of signing of Gakpo, says Nug. I don't think we'll get Gakpo. I think United are setting us up not to buy in January. I don't think we're going to be buying in January. And look, I'm not the owner of Man United. I'm not the CEO, and I'm not the director of football. I think we should be buying in January. I think that we are quite clearly going to run out. I tweeted it this afternoon and basically said, it's very, very obvious that we are going to struggle this season if we don't recruit in January. We're only 3 months into this season. Varane's injured long-term. Maguire's been injured long-term. Rashford had an injury long-term. Martial's had 3 long-term injuries. Anthony's now injured. Sancho's been injured. Lindelof's been injured. In the first 3 months. What's going to happen when we hit January and people are tired and you've got to play 3 games a week for 5 months? It is we don't have a very good injury record as a club anyway. When we hit February, March and April, we're going to fall apart like we did last year. Like, these same players will fall apart again physically. We are going to get a lot of injuries from January to May. 100%. We could miss out on top 4 because of that. So what do? You recruit in January. We need some depth. I'm not saying we go and spend £200 million in January, but we need some depth. We need some clever recruitment in January. Mark, if the Glazers are still here end of next season, we're stuck with them for another 10 years, says Wayne Grant. Well, the Glazers are hanging around for the Super League. It's well known. Big up, Mark. So you think Mudryk is a good player? I think he would be good at United. I haven't really seen a lot of him, EJ. I know a lot of people talk about him. Still doesn't change the fact that Manchester United is going to win the league this year, says NX. Bella Kotchup would be valued at more than what Southampton sold Van Dijk. Let's be real, Mark, says Ihab. I don't know. Are Southampton in a position to sell a player after 1 year for 70 million? I doubt it. The Fofana deal doesn't help people, though, to be honest. I mean, Chelsea spending 70 million on Fofana from Leicester doesn't help people. And you know what? In itself, that is why you need to buy better. Because, you know what? United need to catch the players before they go to Southampton and Leicester. This is what I'm on about. We need to be getting the Anthony before he goes to Ajax. We need to be getting the Bella Kotchup before he goes to Southampton. We need to get the Fofana before he goes to Chelsea. Because if we do, Ten Hag will develop them anyway and we'll get them a lot cheaper. United have got stuck into this rhythm of not risking on Casido from before he went to Brighton, but then going for him when Brighton have developed him. That costs you 80 million quid. We need to scout better and trust better. You get Casido, Fofana, Bella Kotchup before they go where they've gone. You're not going to pay £80 million for them at 22, 23. We've got to stop that because that's the way the market's going. Leicester will sell a centre-back for 80 million. Southampton will sell a centre-back for 60 million. We need to know about these players and bring them in. Why couldn't United have signed Bella Kotchup in the summer? How much did Spurs pay for him? Why couldn't we buy him, have him as part of the squad? He'd have had a few games by now. Develop him in-house with a manager that can develop. It frustrates me because we've become a club that waits. Oh, Anthony's gone to Ajax, look, from Brazil. Was it Sao Paulo? Ooh, that'll be interesting to see what happens. Oh, he's done really well. Let's spend 85 million quid on him. Why didn't we get him from Sao Paulo? Because you had Oli in charge. But with Ten Hag in charge, we've got to start recruiting the next Anthony, the next Fofana. We've got to pick them up because they're there. They are there. If Leicester can find them and Southampton can find them and Ajax can find them, we can bloody find them, and it will save us a lot more money in the future. And the great thing is, if you buy a Bella Kotchup before Southampton does and you pick him up for 15 million and he comes in and he does okay, but he's not quite good enough to play for a top 4 club, you'll still get 25 million from him anyway. It works. It's what Man City do with their youth. Loads of Man City youth players go for about 10 million with a buyback. Anyway, look, I digress and I go on. I've been live for 55 minutes. Bloody hell, that was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Obviously, there's no 8 o'clock show tonight because the press conference was a little bit later, so it sort of merged into a press conference reaction slash 8 o'clock show. We'll be back in the morning with the 10 o'clock show. I already know what that's all about. Then tomorrow afternoon, it's the big one. Manchester United against Sociedad in Sociedad. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. I really enjoyed it.